Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the next edition of our podcast, of the Finance Re7 podcast. Today we have a unique guest from BCB, whose name is Michael. BCB is a very large institution in the space, not just your run-of-the-mill DeFi startup. So, Michael, thank you for making the time.
No, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So tell us about yourself and tell us how you got into the crypto world.
Oh wow, you're going to be digging into some history. So I'm Michael. I lead up the product division here at BCB for markets, and markets sort of has two legs to it here at BCB. We have our trading capabilities for FX and crypto, as well as our yield products, and really centering within the DeFi space. For your listeners, BCB Group is a world-leading crypto-dedicated payments institution, serving many of the industry's largest crypto companies. And essentially, we provide payment services in over 30 currencies, FX, crypto liquidity, custody, yield, and most noticeably, we're known for our settlements network, Blink, which is free and instant, and it allows essentially the industry to settle instantaneously between one another. And how we sort of started was back in 2017 in essentially a response to corporate and institutional demand for essential infrastructure, which cryptocurrency companies have naturally been denied over the years. So how did I land into crypto? Well, like many of individuals in the space, I started my career in banking, NatWest Markets, and particularly within the FX space. But as I was growing, I always yearned for something a little bit more and different. And one of my most powerful motivators that I found for me was during the 2012 sort of collapse, and in particular with the sovereign debt crisis, particularly impacting my home countries of Greece and Cyprus badly, where we saw the banking system really hurt a lot of people. And I sort of really started asking myself, like, there's got to be a better way to manage this. And this is when Bitcoin really started to come out. But fast forward a couple of years, I ended up joining a cryptocurrency exchange, Luno, where I was really introduced to the world and essentially an amazing emerging markets player introducing crypto to the masses. And that's where I really began my crypto journey, with a little bit of investment prior to that. And then from there, I really grew into in the product space, growing out the exchange, where I landed actually at BCB, where I started to really look after the trading technology and also get more into DeFi, which was definitely became a passion for me at that time. So that's where I am today, and that's how I started out and who BCB are.
Nice. Yeah. Well, banking to DeFi is a familiar journey to me, so I can relate to that. So, you mentioned that BCB provides payment services and infrastructure to, corporates, so to speak, but clarify this for us, because wasn't the whole point of crypto is that you don't need any infrastructure and anyone can send a coin to their friends and their, business partners at any, anywhere in the world. So who are the types of people you service, and why do they need BCB? Why can't they just send coins on the blockchain or use, Visa or whatever else for their traditional payments?
No, it's a really good question. And I suppose it comes down to the transition that we are going through as a technology. If you think about it, only a small percentage of the world are still utilizing crypto to its maximum capability. But if you think about a corporate that's established, they need to pay suppliers. They need to be able to do payroll. All of these things where crypto might not be necessarily the first point of call in which people would accept. So essentially, there is still a strong fear underpinning keeping these corporates tied to what will be the traditional system. So where BCB really found its niche was being able to service these clients which have been traditionally rejected or underserved by the banking industry. So essentially, as I sort of see BCB as almost a key player in the transitioning between the traditional system that we have grown accustomed to over the last 60 to 80 years, going back to banks being on mainframes, where we're still using that technology today in some cases, transitioning over to blockchain, which provides the transparency, which provides the efficiencies and the scalabilities that it can essentially unlock.
And so this makes sense, but in case we have crypto skeptics among our listeners, wouldn't they say, well, wait a second, so crypto companies are supposed to be at the forefront of financial innovation, and yet these leaders of the industry have to go back to using the old rails of payment systems? Isn't there a paradox?
Well, no, it's about capital transition. If you think about the ecosystem of crypto, we've grown so much. In the heights, we're talking about the trillions of dollar marks. But if you compare that to the rest of the global economy, it's only a very, very small fraction. And if you think about ecosystems in terms of taps and leaks, right? We're seeing inflows into the crypto world now, and that's been accelerating massively over the last years. In fact, one of the fastest growing ecosystems around. If you think about the time span in which crypto has gone from essentially 0 to trillions, and we need to be able to transition all of that old capital into the new financial system, and that does take time. So naturally, as we evolve, you'll start seeing more and more of those flows. Now, how that might happen, stable coins might be a really interesting first point of call, because it's familiar to a retail end user, it's familiar to a corporate, but you're still utilizing the efficiencies of blockchain technology. And not only this as well, which is really important, is education and regulation need to come hand in hand with that for people to really utilize the new technology well and efficiently, and make sure that they're not subject to scams, that they're not subject to bad controls and processes that lead to substantial losses for individuals and also for the ecosystem as well. So if there is a crypto skeptic on your call that's going, well, why do we still need all this infrastructure? We're not talking about a 5-year journey and then suddenly everybody's going to be in crypto. We're talking intergenerational technology change. We're talking about the new industrial revolution happening all over the internet, and it will only be many, many years from now in which there will be that soon 80% is on blockchain and 20% is on the old tech, as we sort of migrate into the future.
Yeah, that obviously makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious to dive deeper into your activities in DeFi, because obviously BCB, you operate in the regulated realm, right? So you have payment licenses, banking licenses, and across various jurisdictions, if I'm not mistaken. So you operate in a very traditional financial services ecosystem. And yet on the other spectrum, there is DeFi, which is, a lawless, open-ended infrastructure, which allegedly in the long run should have no banks and no intermediaries at all. So how does a financial institution like yourselves kind of combine the spirit of DeFi, and what do you do in DeFi with more traditional banking logic?
So I like to classify things as regulated, and then there's pre-regulated. So let's talk about the regulated aspects of it first. As I mentioned before, BCB being this caretaker, this gateway into this new technology, really being able to utilize it, we need to be able to present an entity as one that really wants to be able to put its best foot forward when it comes to speaking to regulators, speaking to governments, and actually showing that, hey, crypto businesses can actually play within this realm relatively well and be good actors. We're not malicious. We don't want to harm anybody. We want to be able to provide the benefits of the technology to the masses, because that is what we see as the way forward. So what we're seeing here is now what we're trying to do is convert cryptocurrency from being this scary Wild West sort of perception into a regulated asset class that has and can demonstrate good controls, good risk practice management, which is absolutely key in this. And at the same time, be able to educate regulators and the rest of the world to say, hey, listen, this is how you can use this and use it effectively. Let's come then back into this unregulated world. Yes, cryptocurrency protocols and generally and DeFi in general is unregulated, but actually what we're starting to see now is people having to register what it is, how the tech works, and this is the education curve that we need to go on. So, and what will end up happening is you'll start seeing these like little gateway approaches. Before, it was all heavily centralized. You had centralized exchanges facilitating the transfer of crypto. Now we're moving more into protocols being able to transfer value through decentralized wallets, MetaMask, etc. So now we're going to start to see, well, permissioned pools, and that's really come up with the likes of protocols such as Maple and TrueFi, and also stable coins as well with that as well, so that there is this stepping stone into going, right, okay, let's put some gateways around it, let's make it let's really understand how everything is working, and then a full transition to true permissionless open public spheres. But every type of product might require slightly different things. Every counterparty on another side of a transaction might require something different. So you'll get a blend. You'll get some things that will be completely open, some things that might be a little bit more permissioned. And I feel that's the direction that we're heading in right now.
And how would that work in an open realm of DeFi? Because DeFi is supposed to be a situation where you have an open software and anyone can come and use it, anyone can copy paste it. So what products would a bank of the 21st century be offering in this new version of the future, right? Because in the traditional world, you have, what do banks do? They offer lending and credit services and deposits. They offer payment services, they offer investment products and various financial products around these core principles. Would BCB and the BCBs of this world offer the same, but tailored to the new reality? Or would it be something completely radically different? Like, would you be offering, I don't know, would you become the Netflix or something? Like, how would that work?
So the way I sort of see the borrow and lend user case evolving is essentially, if a bank wanted to participate in lending, traditionally what an individual will do, they'll come to a bank, they'll KYC, the bank will run a credit score check against the individual, try and affirm what assets they have, and then be able to give out terms on a loan. Essentially, we'll need to reconstruct that. The way that the market is done that currently is by providing capital up front, so you lock your value in Aave. But we want to be able to get to a spot where we can do the credit checks on an individual's wallet, but also maybe have that connected to other wallets to prove that this individual, whoever they might be, has the assets that they say and that the assets are all correct. But also we need to have physical assets also on the blockchain, so houses. And this is where actually I think the true potential of NFTs really come in, not necessarily in the form of JPEG art, but actually in the form of real world assets that can be transferred on value on the blockchain. So once we've got actually all the components in place, I actually do see a transition over to pure open DeFi, with banks being liquidity providers on the other side because they have capital, but making sure that the individual they are lending to will repay. Essentially, that's the key bit. Otherwise, the whole the trust in the system absolutely collapses. But you can have protocols and maths be able to determine what the loans are, and it's fair. And actually, what that does for the consumer is actually fantastic, because one, they get a little bit of insight into how the loan process works. There is a lot more transparency on the other side of it as well, because sometimes you can put some of your details into a black box, say on a mortgage website, and they spit out a value on the other side, and people don't necessarily know how that's been computed or how that's been taken away. And do you know if they're adding so much X margin onto your loan? These are all questions that one asks themselves when they're going through it. So, but also with it being public, you can also get more real-time feeds. You can get a more accurate loan as you go through the term.
So it sounds like it's like an operating system, right? Where the banks will still exist, the products will conceptually still be the same, but instead of literally a closed box in a building, it's the back end, so to speak, is open-ended.
Yeah, precisely. And I think it's probably fair to say, like, traditional corporates that we would have seen, especially banks, aren't just going to go away overnight. Like, it's unheard of. I mean, you think about the starts of some of the major banks that we know today. They've existed for centuries. They're not going to suddenly evaporate because cryptocurrency has come along. No, they'll bring digital assets and blockchain protocols into their day-to-day. They would find the efficiencies and where they would work for their corporation and utilize that as much as possible. And eventually, you might even end up seeing a completely decentralized JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs one day. Who knows? But it's what blockchain represents for me. Is the evolution of technology and moving away from inefficient, clunky systems that we have today, because our industry, because of our global nature of economy now, right? We can't really settle for a non-24/7 payments and value transfer system. It needs to match the need that we have immediately, and that's essentially what all of Web2 tech has been moving towards. Now what Web3 tech is going to be realizing. Basically a 24/7 economy, global economy for its 24/7 citizens within that.
And if we zoom in away from the future into today, you mentioned you're already active in DeFi. So, DeFi, decentralized finance, crypto, blockchain. What can your customers do right now, right? So if someone says, okay, well, actually, I do believe that blockchain technology has value. I do believe decentralized finance has interesting innovation. What are the opportunities that are in front of them, and how can BCB help?
Well,
obviously with a disclaimer that none of this is financial promotion.
No, of course, and thank you for clarifying. So what can our customers do today? Well, there's a couple of aspects within crypto that they can operate in. Now, the traditional sort of value transfer is making payments and storing their assets. But the most recent product that we've launched onto the market.
And sorry to interrupt. When you say storing assets, I think it's good if you clarify, right? So
through a custody solution. So we do crypto custody here at BCB. Essentially, the other product that we have recently launched in conjunction with Re7, because we like to work with some of the best players in the space, is our yield product. So essentially, being able to offer a fund, a vehicle for our customers to invest their excess fiat and be able to get exposure to this new exciting digital sector rather than just investing in the underlying asset itself. So this is something that we're really excited to launch. We're really proud of all the work that we've actually taken to get to this point in time, and and it's great to have partners such as yourself that really take risk management to another level. And this is actually something that was really important to us at BCB, because we wanted to ensure that our clients were investing in a product that was taking every single step that it could within this new digital world to be able to spot and think ahead around what are the risks that present itself. Because yes, there is still elements that are a little bit more volatile, that things that we haven't quite worked out in terms of process, and I think that's been realized with like things that have happened over the last couple of months with FTX, with Luna Terra, and it comes with the maturity of a market as we start to implement really good risk management process. But it's really good to see like that there are firms out there doing it right, doing correctly, and actually really building a name for it themselves on that. And
what do you think is the, for your customers and people beyond that, who are sitting on assets, who need help with payments or custody or whatever, a lot of them are now questioning the value proposition of crypto, because crypto is or blockchain is supposed to be transparent and reliable, and yet you have situations like FTX where it's basically fraud or alleged fraud, and previous bankruptcies in the space. So is crypto structurally flawed, right? Can we expect that every single year there'll be massive thefts and blowups and the whole blockchain will basically cease to work? Or is there a differentiation that's important to understand between, obviously people understand that technology and individual people are very different things, but like, why are you structurally excited about decentralized finance versus centralized counterparties?
I think for me, it's the evolution of growth to learn from mistakes in our industry that I'm quite impressed about. So you think about crypto and digital assets are still in its infancy. So before, at the dawn, we started with a new theory on technology, and we built that technology. And then as we went through a couple of market cycles, we started to not lose any traction, and we started to increase that value and share that around. So that started to attract individuals to the space. So we started to develop people. We got such as yourself, such as me, who have left traditional markets, who believe that this is the future, and started to bring with that the talent. And actually, during some of my time at Outlier Ventures, I'm absolutely impressed by the number of young entrepreneurs that have come into the space and like developed and had the business acumen to build things by themselves at such a young age. And I think actually, when we talk about accessibility for finance, we must also talk about with crypto the accessibility for IP and business origination. So much room to grow, but what we need to now start working on in this recent downturn is really putting in place the right processes. And this comes from everything to risk management, but also to stop fraudulent activity from happening. We've really stomped down on the ICO craze and rug pulls, not to say that they don't happen still, but that was a big issue several years ago, and that used to be one of the counter arguments of crypto. Oh, it's all a scam, you're going to get rugged. And now we're sort of just shaking off the high sort of like, oh, everything is going to the moon, et cetera, and suddenly now my monkey JPEG isn't worth like $100 million, but actually now we're getting into some really core building and actually really utilizing this tech. The fact that like protocols like Aave are still thriving, still got like billions of dollars locked up in value in these protocols just show it's not going away. So for me, it's reminding ourselves that we're still in our infancy, that we still have room to grow, and that we're going to grow properly. And the gateway, again, for this is going to happen with stable coins, because as soon as the regulators are forced to actually legislate and provide guidance and rules on digital assets and cryptocurrency assets, you're going to end up creating the plane that will allow for safe development and growth that will end up in the hands of ordinary users. And I think that's the bit probably I'm most excited about. So being able to educate, bring up to speed governments, regulators, and the general people who will be benefiting from this tech, so that we can have essentially this mass transition from old system to new. But again, this is an intergenerational thing. It will probably be very, very old men by the time your everyday person suddenly makes a payment on their phone, and underlying that is purely powered by blockchain technology.
That's a long-term effort. So it sounds like we have a lot of work to do.
I think that's it. Think about coming up with the idea from scratch about a bank, and like all of the things that it will do as a new age proposition, and how much thinking needs to go into it, and actually how much legislation needs to go into it. And unfortunately for us right now, we're sort of trying to provide regulation to Web3, or thinking about regulation with Web3 and also digital assets in this 2D world, and it's 3D. There's just so many elements to think about. Like we don't even regulate the internet effectively enough, and that's just information transfer, let alone value transfer. So that's going to be a very interesting space. And let's not also kid ourselves. Like, the traditional world has also still got its faults. The largest scandals and pieces are still happening in our day-to-day with our banks. You talk about the Hulk Bank scandal for gas for gold. You think about the fines that RBS and HSBC and Barclays have incurred through FX and Euribor and LIBOR rigging. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to stop. You're not going to stop with your bank because of what's happened. Everybody knows, you can read on the internet what has happened, but people aren't leaving in droves. And the same thing has to happen for us. Yes, there has been a cataclysmic issue in the market. People are hurt. We need to stop that again. But also, we need help from the traditional world to go, right, let's create the safe space for this. Let's do this properly so that we don't have this ever again. So that's what I really want to see. And that's where I think the transition will end up going. We'll have our downturns, we'll have our mistakes and lessons to be learned. We cannot make them again once we have learned from them. And yes, you can even argue that FTX and what happened is a repeat of some of our old centralized past, but this is why we need to move to a decentralized world with open source and transparency, so that we don't have to trust centralized individuals and parties who sometimes or allegedly have made backdoor agreements for large loans to be made out to investment arms of their business.
Yeah, that will be very, very helpful for the industry to avoid that going forward. So to finish it off on open source, on DeFi, what's the one final thought you would like to leave our listeners with, right? What should excite them about this mystical and unclear world of decentralized finance and decentralized economy?
This might become into a little bit of like economic theory 101, but like just the consumer surplus that an individual can benefit from in DeFi, the unknown benefit that you can have. When you were a youngster and you're waiting for a cab at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you had to call all the mini cab providers to come and get you, and nobody will come and get you. And then Uber came along, and then you literally open up your phone, and then there was a cab waiting for you there. And I think that feeling of just like, I didn't realize how much I needed this until I started using it. And same with like apps like Revolut or Monzo, where like before you would go and wait 2-3 hours in a bank getting interviewed around all this KYC AML, and then suddenly you can open up an account in less than 10 minutes. You didn't realize how much time you got back and how much value you got back by having customer success on a live app that you could solve your query within 10 minutes. Like, that is what DeFi and the world of cryptocurrency can actually restore back to individuals, which is like, oh, I need to go and be able to make I need to borrow some money quickly to pay an individual. I'll go to Aave, deposit some collateral, and I'll send those funds over to the other side. Okay, my loan term's up. I need to go and get that back. Just imagine the time just being able to go, okay, yes, I know I can do this. Or to even go, I need to make a payment halfway across the world. If it's to not a major currency jurisdiction, can take some significant time. Oh, wait a minute, I can pay my provider in less than 10 minutes now. Like, you know, that is the value that individual can get back. Confirmation as well. So I'm really excited for that world. I'm really excited for not only what blockchain can present for individuals, but also DeFi as well. So the efficiency of tech, the transparency and everything like that. So for me, it's the return of consumer surplus to the individual and the end user that I'm most excited about.
And obviously students having a good time at 3 a.m. in the morning when they're coming home.
100%. And just imagine that all, and you can NFT that experience. You never get to lose it.
In the metaverse, you don't even need to go anywhere.
This is exactly it. That's probably a talk for us another time, Evgeny.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for making the time and joining us. Thank you for sharing this version of the future where we don't need to depend on the legacy systems of 200 years ago, and hope to do this one again, another one of these very soon.
Thank you for having me. And this has been a great chat. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening.